Starting tonight, in the next 6 days, we have 5 different programs from the Harry H. Barron Ask OU outreach program. This is the first one. Thursday night, we have a shiur from Rabbi Moshe Clarksburg, who's the head of the meat department in the OU. It's a Skype shiur to the Kollel Beis HaTalmud in Melbourne, Australia. And Sunday, Mitzvah Shem, we have a shiur in Boston on wine and grape juice. And in Washington Heights, we have Shabbos and Sunday program. And in a few weeks, we're going to have in Lakewood before Pesach shiurim. So just like it's a very busy time between Purim and Pesach, everybody's getting their house ready for Pesach. Baruch Hashem, in Kashrus education, we're very busy as well. And we're very pleased that we're beginning this whole series of shiurim right here in the Yeshiva Torah V'das. And we're very fortunate to have the schus, to have the Rosh HaYeshiva, HaRav Hagoyin Rabbi Yisroel Belsky Shlit to begin. And everyone here is familiar with Rav Belsky as far as being the Rosh Yeshiva, but many of you familiar faces that you've visited the OU, and you know that Rav Belsky also is the poisik for the OU, and as a result, since the OU is the largest kashrus organization in the world, the psukim that Rav Belsky gives affects the food that Klal Yisroel is eating. So my birchas hedjit is that Rav Belsky should be mamshech in his avodas hakodesh as the Rosh Yeshiva of Torah V'das and as the poisik for the OU ad mei v'esrim shana.
Amen.
I'd like to thank Reb Chaim Loike for taking care of all the birds that have joined us, our special guests this evening. And Reb Chaim works very much together with the Rosh Yeshiva and asks them shilas constantly of what birds Klal Yisroel can eat, which they can't. And tonight, Rabbi Loike will be asking those shilas to the Rosh Yeshiva, and we will hear what the Rosh Yeshiva says on each shilah that he is presented with. Rabbi Loike.
So if you take a look, you have the Mar Makomo sheet in front of you. The way we're going to set this up is Rabbi Belsky has chosen some topics which he wants to discuss with the Olam, and we're going to present shilas that are nogeya for the Mar Makomos which you have. The basic idea here is that you should be able to see on the video the animals, but if you really want to understand them afterwards, you're more than welcome to come up. We also have laminated sheets because it's a little wet, so you can look, and if you didn't follow some details about some of the birds presented, you can take a look at them, but don't keep them, leave them for other people who might want to look. And our first question is going to be to Rabbi Belsky to help us understand what defines a species. So we have over here, just for Mesorah purposes, lahavdil ben tamei ven tahor, these are torim, these are turtle doves. And as you can see, this turtle dove, I don't know if you can see, this turtle dove is white, and this turtle dove is what they called wild color, it's brown. And the reality is that they're the same species, and we know they're the same species because we've kept these doves, and they've had babies that look like that, and we've had doves that like this, which produce babies that look like that. So there's really no shaila. These are the same species. They look different, the colors, the feathers, a few differences, but there's no shaila that they're all collecting the same Mesorah. If you have a tradition that this bird is kosher, if you understand this is a Torah, there's no reason to differentiate between the two birds. However, sometimes we have shilas that get a little bit more interesting. And what we have here, and I don't know if they'll come out clearly, and otherwise we'll have to manipulate the environment, but we have over here. Should I bring them over, or can we get them on? Okay. So we have here mallard ducks. Sure. We have here mallard.
Maybe it would be kedai to give a general hakdama, because I don't know. There are probably many people over here in this room who haven't the vaguest idea of what any discussion involving birds is all about. So maybe it would be good to digest a few words of Hakdama. Okay. But what do I do? Okay. Rabbi said, the Torah has there are different parshas that speak about oifos. There's a long list of oifos tameim in Shmini and in Re'eh. There are other discussions about oifos, about Shtei Tziporim, Chayos Tahoros that a Mesorah takes. There's Torim, the B'nai that I mentioned all over. And in many places there are oifos. Yeah. It's not easy to differentiate between oifos tameim and oifos tahorim. And the oifos tameim simply means oifos that are osir to eat, and oifos tahorim mean oifos that are mutter to eat. I once spoke about certain species of animals that are tameim, and there are people who it got around in many different places. They were all laughing and amusing themselves over what they perceived as a terrible mistake that I made. That I said that today B'zman hazeh with Noik with Tumah and Tara, and after all there's no Tumah and Tara today. We don't have the Porah Aduma. And we're all tameim, and so on. So what shaykh to say that certain oifos are tameim and not tameim? It became a whole big public discussion. It's extremely important to be familiar with the language that's used by the Torah and that's used in this forum that we learn in the Chumash and Rashi and the Gemara and Rashi and Tosfos. Unless people are familiar with the language, they could end up making silly mistakes like the one above. The word Tomei and Tohor is used for Isser and Heter. It's a kinui. Oifos Tomei means oifos that are osir, and oifos Tohor means oifos that are mutter, to eat. And it has nothing to do with the tumah and the tara that we speak of, when we talk about Ovos HaTumah and Meisim and Shrotzim and all the other dinim and the Rishon LaTumah. All those halachas of Tumah mean something entirely different. Okay? Just to make that very clear from the beginning. That's number one. Secondly, it would be kedai just for someone to learn through the end of the Perik Elu Treifas. The beginning talks about all the different treifas, but in the end it talks about the minim tameim and the minim tahorim. And there are 4 different kinds of things mentioned in the Torah, in Parshas Shmini and Parshas Re'eh. Not all of them, it's much shorter in Parshas Re'eh. There are animals that are mutter, there are animals that are osir. Okay? We call that behemoth tahoros and behemoth tameis. There are fish that are mutter and there are fish that are osir. It's maybe that some people don't even use the term fish for a lot of them, but an octopus is called dog tomei. Okay, the fact that it's not shaped like a fish, that's one of the reasons it's author, because it doesn't have fins and scales. Then there are grasshoppers that are mutter, and there are grasshoppers that are author. And the last group is the group of birds. There are oifes tameim and oifes tahira. And like the Mishnah says in Chulin, there's no clear-cut and easy simonim that are used to define oifes tameim and oifes tahira by behemoths. And I'll use the word chayos. We're not going to get involved in that. But chayos generally means undomesticated behemoths. There are 3 minim called behemoths tahiras. That's all just 3. And there are 7 chayos tahiras, which are not, they're not domesticated. If you look in the Chumash, you'll see there's Shoir, say Ksofim, say Izim. What does all that mean? It means from the cattle family, from the goat family, from the lamb, from the sheep family. Kesev, Ksofim, that's sheep. The young ones are called Ksofim. The older ones are called Ayil, Rochel, but they're all from the sheep family. There are goats, that's the 3rd min. And then there are 7 chayas. And when you open the Chumash and you'll see the 7 names, so you should be aware of what they are. I'm not going to go into defining those 7. Ayol, Utzvi, V'yachmur, Akoy, V'disha, Nisa'oi, V'zomer. That's the way they're named in the Torah. But there are simonim that makes us know which is Tomei and which is Torah. In order to be Torah, it has to be Mali Geira or Mafris Parasa. Okay? I'm not going to go into that now. But these are simonim that are easy to locate and easy to define. When it comes to grasshoppers, it's much different. You have to know and memorize each one. There are 4 grasshoppers, 4 species mentioned. Yeah? Oh, look at that, I'm telling you.
Go ahead, so keep going.
There are 4 species of kosher grasshoppers, and there are 4 liminehus, which means to say that there are 8 altogether. So you have to know the 8 species in order to be able to eat all of them. If you know any one species, that's fine, so you could eat that. But there are no simonim. The Gemara gives a whole long list of ways of identifying them, and the bottom line is that one of the ways of identifying them is ushmoi chogov. Rashi says that we don't know of anyone that we could say is shmoi chogov, and because of that we can't eat any grasshoppers. But there are a number of Sephardic countries and communities that have a Mesorah on different species of grasshoppers, and they say that these are shmoi chogov as well as the other simonim, and we know that these are toher. Okay? When it comes to birds, Rabbi say, there are 21 birds mentioned in the Torah, and there's 3 luminehus, and we always speak about the Chaf Daled Oifos Tameim. Good? Oifos Loshen Zocher, despite the fact that it ends up with a Vav Sof for the plural Oifos, we don't say Oifim, but we say Tameim and not Tameos. Okay? The names are all there in the Torah. We can't identify them that easily. The Gemara says there's hundreds of birds which are part of the Oirev family. The raven, or perhaps the crow, maybe Oirev includes both. Maybe one is in the Lamineu, but it says Eis Kol Oirev Lamineu, and the Gemara says there are white Orphim. So there are a lot of birds that are under the category of Orphim. They're all Aser Midaraisa. The only person who would be capable of going out and identifying every single bird in the world and telling you whether it's Tameh or Toher is the Gemara calls such a person Rabbi Tzayit, a Rebbe who's a hunter, which means that he knows all the birds and he knows Torah and he can teach them to his Talmidim. Today we have no such person. We have no Rabbi Tzayit left in the world who is able to identify all the birds. So that's one tool for understanding the parashas in the Torah that we're missing completely. It's brought in Shulchan Aruch that if you know a Rabbi Tzayit, you could rely on him for everything. But just like there are species that are, extinct, there's a subspecies called Rabbi Tzayit that's also, I guess, to all purposes extinct. So how do you know which oifes are tameim and which oifes are tahirim? So listen carefully. I want to tell you very briefly, and then we'll go on to the individual birds. You have to know this. Why? Because, first of all, it's part of the Torah, and you're mechuyev to know the whole Torah. Okay? It's not just in order to be able to determine whether you should eat this piece of meat. You have to know the Torah because the Torah is the Torah Akdosh, and every word of the Torah you have to know what it means. And if we can't, you can't. So you have no choice. But where it says, Hatzori, Vatzipoirin, Hachelben, Avoina, if you don't know it, okay, you're an onus. But there's a mitzvah to know the Torah, Rabbi say. Just remember that. When a person goes around and saying, I don't know this, or when you learn in Cheder and they come to a Rashi with a few words of digduk, and the Rebbe would say, these Rashis we don't learn. It's as if Rashi is saying some very shameful, terrible, embarrassing thing that you have to keep quiet about, keep mum. There's no such thing. It's the Torah Akdosh. You're mechuyev to know the Torah. Every drop of the Torah there's a chiyuv to know, period. The Gemara says that even though the Torah never gave simonim, but Chazal give over 4 simonim of Torah. Now listen carefully. 4 simonim of Torah mean that if there's a bird that has all 4 simonim, then for sure it's Toher. But it may it be Toher even if it has 3 simonim, even if it has 2 simonim, even if it has 1 simon. But for that we have to have a Mesorah with a clear identification. What is a Mesorah? I told you one way, that we have a Rabbi Tzayid who knows all the oifes. He's the expert. We wouldn't have those experts anymore. So the only way to do it is to have a Mesorah on specific birds. Okay? And that is where the problem begins. A Mesorah is not an easy thing to have. A Mesorah means there's a direct giving over, which is tradition. The word tradition means giving over. It's used popularly to mean some type of mystical, custom among people, a tradition. But that's not what it means. What it means is a Mesorah to give over from generation to generation. Okay? And as time goes on, okay, As time goes on, there are Mesorahs that get lost. So, there are Mesorahs that were preserved in certain countries, and in other countries, they didn't preserve that Mesorah. And then there's a machlokes. Some countries, they say, we won't eat this bird because we know that in many generations it was taught to us by our Chachamim, who gave over to us the way it was throughout the generations, that they didn't use this bird. And there's another country where it said, what do you mean? This bird was in use in all our lands for generations and generations. I'll give you one well-known example. There's a bird that looks like a hen, a little bit, but it's definitely not a hen. It's another species altogether, and that's called guinea fowl. Okay? G-U-I-N-E-A. That's guinea. And this guinea fowl, okay, the female is called a guinea hen. In Algeria and in many Sephardic lands, in fact, they ate the guinea fowl. Ad hayoim. In Ashkenazic lands, they didn't. And we'll discuss that later in response to some issues that are brought up. But Chazal said that there are 4 simonim. What are the 4 simonim? And I told you a bird does not have to have all 4 simonim in order to be toher. But if we know of a bird that has all 4 simonim, then we could assume that that bird is toher. But there's a problem, and I'll take another minute to tell you what the 4 simonim are and to tell you why there's a problem. One siman tara, Rabbi say, is that the bird has a zephek. The zephek is, in English, the word is crop, C-R-O-P. What is a zephek? When the bird swallows something, solid food, right, or seeds, or even little pebbles, because that's all part of the bird's diet. Do you know that? That the bird eats pebbles, it's part of the diet of the bird. And it has to eat and digest the stones, and it has to pass through his digestive system. I'm sure that there's half the people sitting here could tell me right on the spot why the bird has to eat pebbles. We don't have to eat pebbles, and it's bad for us. It'll harm us if we eat pebbles. And the bird eats pebbles and has to digest them and swallow them, and it goes into his bloodstream like food. Why does the bird have to eat pebbles? Huh? The eggshell. The eggshell is made of stone. So a bird couldn't form a shell without the pebble. There's another reason, and we'll talk about that briefly in a moment. So the food that the bird eats goes into its mouth, and it goes down the food pipe, right? We call the food pipe the esophagus. Another name, veshet vovshin tes. That's the pipe that leads from the mouth into the body of the bird. But when the pipe, the food pipe, reaches the bottom of the neck, in many, many birds, it takes a little rest and stops there, because there's a little sac, and the food pipe widens and forms a bulge, and that bulge is like a bag and an enlarged part of the food pipe, and sometimes it could be a tremendous, tremendous bag if the bird just kept eating and eating and eating, and it fills, and then the bird takes a rest, and little by little the contents of that bulge empty into the second half of the veshet, which leads to the stomach. We'll talk about that in a second, what the stomach of a bird is. That bulge is called a zephek, or in English a crop. So it says, oif sheyesh lo zefek. Do you know not every kosher bird has a zefek? Are you aware of that? There are birds that are commonly eaten that have no zefek. A chicken and a rooster, yes, they have a zefek. Anything from the chicken, rooster, hen, one family, of course, and they have zefek. But the duck doesn't. There's no zefek in a duck. So it doesn't stop, doesn't enter this little sac and wait for its turn to be pushed further down into the system. Okay? That's the way it is by a duck. After the zefek, what happens to the food? It enters the kurkavon, right? I'm sure you all heard about the heilige kurkavon. The kurkavon is like a stomach. You know, the old days, when you sat down to eat a fleischige meal, one of the delicacies which was part of the meal was to eat pipik, kurkavon, or giblets they called them, because there were a couple of different items that were in the plate, and today nobody eats them anymore, but the gorgel, right, the neck with its neck meat, the kurkavon, and the little feet, they were all mixed together and stewed and cooked, and that was part of the Shabbos meal and meals during the week. So you saw the kurkavon all the time. The food pipe enters the kurkavon, which has inside a big space, not that big, but big enough for the use of the digestion of the life of the bird. Okay? Inside the kurkavon, there's a little sac, because the outside is the muscle that causes this kurkavon to squeeze and open and squeeze and open. It's a powerful muscle. It has tremendous koach as far as the bird is concerned, but you don't know, neither does the bird know when his kurkavon, right, in pipik, is contracting and expanding and contracting and expanding. And a lot of those nice shiny pebbles which the bird ate go into the kurkavon, and it forms a mill. You know what a mill is? Where stones grind together and grind up the food, right? Grinds up the wheat to make flour, and all the other stuff, the corn and the barley, all have to go through a mill where there are stones that grind it. Well, inside the kurkavon, you have the little pebbles, some of which are going to end up becoming eggshells. And those little pebbles are going to be squeezed again and again and again and again, and they're going to act as little mills to grind up the seeds and the other stuff that the bird eats, the hard seeds, which are like little pebbles themselves when you take it into your fingers, but the real pebbles, the stones, are going to act as millstones to grind them up. Okay, that lining to the kurkavon, that sac, sometimes is easy to peel off by a chicken, by a duck. All it takes is a second. You grab hold of it, and you flip it out, and you peel off the sac. Okay? And the meat is now independent, and you could go ahead and stew it and cook it. After, of course, it has to have malicha to get out the blood from the meat, like all the meat. But the sac could be peeled off from the inside of the kurkavon. There are birds that the sac is so tightly glued, connected to the wall, to the muscle of the kurkavon, that it doesn't come off unless you take a knife or cook it and peel it with great difficulty. That's not called peelable. But there are birds, the kosher birds, b'derech klal, have what the Gemara calls kurkivonoi niklaf. The kurkivon could be peeled. The peeled is not on the outside of the kurkivon, but it's on the inside of the kurkivon. It's the lining of the little sac that's surrounded by the muscle of the kurkivon. Okay? That's the second of the 4 simonim. Good. That should be easy to determine, because take any bird and shecht it and take out the kurkivon, and you see right away whether it's niklaf or not. Okay. There's a third siman, which is a little harder to figure out. That third siman is called Yisroel etzba Yisroel, as an extra finger. Now, there's a machlokes rishonim what etzba Yisroel means. Some say it means that there are 3 fingers which are out in front, and there's an opposing thumb. Opposing means that it's opposite the 3, not that it opposes the other fingers. Oh, this is a duck, right? And take a look at the middle finger. The middle finger here is longer, and then there's a little finger in the back. I mentioned 2 things, by the way. This finger over here, this is an opposing thumb. Okay? Yeah. Take a look at your own hand before we look back at the bird. It has 4 fingers, and there's a thumb here. If not for the fact that the thumb is opposing the other fingers, you wouldn't be able to do 90% of the things that you could do with your hand. A human being has an opposing thumb. The bird, the kosher bird, b'derech klal, has an etzba Yisroel, means, according to one pshat, it has an opposing thumb, but 3 fingers in front and a thumb in back. Together, they grab hold of a branch. Huh? Grab hold of a branch or a stick or a rope or something, and the bird could perch. Okay, so the bird sits like this, one and the other one over here, and it could sit there for a long, long time and perch and flap its wings ever so often, every couple of seconds. It gives a little flap. Now, I'm going to say something over here which is not part of the halachas of oifes tameim and oifes Torah, but I just mentioned that the bird sits and perches on the twig, on the branch, or on the string, right? Or on the floor or anything, and it flaps its wings every so often. Does anybody know why the bird flaps its wings? Because it's nervous? Because it wants to get up and dance the kazatzkin? Why does it flap its wings? Huh? Huh? No way. It has nothing to do with balance. To breathe. To breathe is why it flaps its wings, because the lungs of a bird are tucked under the wings. There's no lung chamber like we have, right? A chest that has a closed room with a lung and heart in it, and there's a floor called the diaphragm, and then everything is after that. No, the bird has one big chamber which contains everything. But under the right wing and under the left wing, there's little pink lungs. And the only way for those lungs to inhale and exhale is if the wing squeezes them, and then they exhale the air that's in them. And when the wing opens up, so the air from the street, from the outside, goes into the lung. Do you understand? That's the way that the bird breathes. If you hold a bird by its wings for not that long, the bird will die. It'll die of asphyxiation, which is death by strangulation, by not being able to breathe. That's why the bird has its wings, its lungs under its wings, and keeps flapping the wings back and forth. Okay. The legs of the bird, like I told you, those birds that are used for perching, they use their legs for perching, They have 3 legs in front and 1 leg in the back, and there's an opposing thumb. That's, according to one shita, what's called etzba Yisroel, the opposing thumb, which faces the 3 ones in front, which makes the foot ideal for perching. Got it? Another shita in etzba Yisroel is that the middle finger of the 3, as you saw by that duck, the duck has webbed feet, so the toes are connected by a sheet of skin called the webbing. But the middle finger is longer than the other 2. So we say that it's Yisroel. It's longer than the other 2. So there are 2 shittas in Rishonim as to what an etzba Yisroel is. Okay? Those are 3 of the 4 simonei tumah. Tara, my mistake. Sorry for that one. Well, if the bird doesn't have them, then they're like simonei tumah. But it's not necessarily tumah, because it could be missing if we have a Mesorah. There's a 4th siman, which is more absolute. That 4th siman is called ha'oif hadoires tumah. An oif that doires is a bird of prey, an attacking bird that grabs its victims and bites away at them and eats them up while they're alive. It grabs its food in the air, right? Or it bites and holds its food down, holds the victim down on the floor, and eats away at it. A bird of prey, right? You know all about the eagles and the other such birds. They're strong, and they're attacking, and they are not perching birds. They don't stand on a branch or a twig or any such thing. Okay? And the feet are made for grabbing, clasping around the victim, 2 fingers on one side and 2 fingers on the other side. And in between is the bird that's going to be eaten up. That's the oif hadoires. Good. There are other shittas in Rishonim, but I named a few of them right now as to what doires is. Kol oif hadoires is tomei. Good. And that's an absolute, because once it's doires, so then the other simonim don't count 1 drop. But it's very hard to figure out whether the oif is doires or not. Right? Chazal tell us the story of a tarnagoylto de agmo, certain kind of tarnagoylas that lived in the swamps and in the meadows, the agam, and it looked like a very pleasant bird. And one day, so people came and watched the tarnagoyla de agma, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, it attacked another bird and was doires, and grabbed it, 2 fingers on one side, 2 fingers on the other side, and tightly in between, and that was the end of the victim bird, right? Sounds a little gruesome, but if you ate chicken tonight for supper, you were doing the same thing. Now, the boy type. You have to be a chacham, even if you're not tzayit chacham, who knows all the chavdalad oifes. But any person who's going to tell you dayas about this has to be a shtickle chacham. I just want to stop over here for a minute A couple of years ago, there was what we so delightfully call a tumult. There was a tumult made about the chickens, and they discovered that all the chickens that we're eating are all dorsim, and they're all tomei, and they're all this, and they're all that. Right? But you know what a tumult means? A tumult means when someone gets up on a chair and announces to the whole world, I am an Amoritz. So that's what's meant by a tumult. And they were able to show everybody that a certain chicken which is in common use, which was interbred and produced for the farms, and this chicken which is now being eaten on Shabbos Tikkitishin and all over the place, lo and behold, these chickens were Loike Esraglov. They grabbed hold of a stick, 2 fingers on one side, 2 fingers on the other side, and they grabbed tightly onto the stick. Okay? In the same manner as an attacking bird. Okay? So that's a problem, right? And it makes everybody scream and print kol koiris and drive the whole world crazy. If you'll take any bird in the world, a pigeon or a sparrow or a chicken or anything, and you'll shock it if you go behind it and give it a kick or something, and the bird will naturally shriek and flap its wings and flutter and be scared to death, and it'll grab onto something for dear life, it'll be Choyle Kisraglov. Okay? And this is what they were doing, and they made a huge tumult. That's not what Choyle Kisraglov means. Choyle Kisraglov means, in normally, when it eats, it separates its fingers, 2 on one side and 2 on the other side. Okay? But that tumult maker was able to show hundreds of people who showed each other, and it started shocking the whole world. And then they came to me and they said, there's terrible, terrible michshol. We're all eating shafna birds. Understand? Because the birds we eat are Choyle Kisraglov. And I told them, if you take any bird in the world and do what to that bird, what this fellow did to the chickens that he had, you'd have the same Choyle Kisraglov. Because that's what a bird does when it's scared to death and it grabs onto something for dear life. But those are the 4 simonim. Good? So it's important to know them, Rabbi. So it's part of the Heilige Torah to know the 4 simonim. Next time you get a chicken, so ask the butcher if he could send you home the pipik. So at least you'll be able to open it up and to see if the niklaf, the sack inside of it. But not after he cleans out the pipik and salts it and packages it in a plastic bag, because by that time there'll be nothing left inside. Okay? I think we could go from here, but let me tell you something. We're going to talk here about Mesorahs of kosher birds, and that's why Rashi, who says that any bird, unless we really know and we have a Mesorah and a tradition that's given over dor dor to describe the bird and to say whether it's kosher or not, any bird maybe is a doires unless we have a Mesorah fakert, just like the Tarnagol to the Agma, and that's the minig, even if we have all 3 simone tara, okay, and to all appearances the bird is not doires, but we're chorshish. Who knows, maybe one day we'll discover that it's doires. There's many Rishonim, many Achronim, many communities where they're cholik on Rashi and they say that we could go bosar simonim, okay? But for practical purposes, the whole world, from one end to the other, uses Mesorahs to identify oifas to Hiram, okay? That's the introduction.
Over here, we have partridges, which are known as chukar partridges, which Rabbi Belsky has looked over the Mesorah. We accept as kosher. We've shechted them for the OU. I have 3 chukar partridges. If you take a look at their face, they're almost identical to the first shiloh, which is a filby partridge. But if you take a look at the filby partridge, I'm going to just show Rebbe first, and then I'll turn it around. So the filby partridge is identical to the chukar, except its face is black. We also know that they breed together. However, scientifically, they're classified as different species. But the fact that they're so similar, except for the black mask in the front of its face, and they breed together, are we considering them as 2 species, or is this not enough of a difference that we would consider them to be 2 separate species?
Boys can say that if the birds breed together easily, then we could consider them to be 1 species. And we use that siman as a positive identification.
Okay. Thank you, Rebbe. Our next question is back to what Rebbe was saying about the Mesorah. If you just give me 1 second. We have here a male and a female mallard duck. This is the female, this is the male. We have a Mesorah that the mallard is kosher. We have many places where we know it was shechted. There's no shiloh that the mallard is a kosher duck. Our shiloh is regarding a duck which is very similar to the mallard, but very much in miniature. The OU tried to get a Mesorah as Rebbe was describing, where we would go to an old shochet who shechted them, and he would verify for us that it was kosher. We were able to locate probably about somewhere between 91 and 95 years old, and this shochet had shechted them 60 years earlier in Romania. And we brought him these ducks, which I'll show you in a second, and the shochet at first said he was sure they were kosher. But then he said, I'm so old, I'm afraid that my mind isn't working as well as I had hoped. I'm 95% sure that these ducks are kosher, but I'm not 100% sure. I can't say that I'm giving you the Mesorah. My question is not whether or not that Mesorah works. My question is as follows. We know, based on pictures and that were put as woodcuts in various svarim for the 1800s, that this bird was shechted in Livorno, Italy. We have no indication that it was accepted as kosher anywhere else, because we cannot rely on this Romanian shochet since he himself was not sure about what he was saying. Can we rely on the Mesorah of one country, one small area of a country where only based on historical documents we know the duck is kosher, but we have no Mesorah ish mi pi ish from one person to another, and that we don't know how much it was accepted beyond the boundaries of that one specific kehillah. The other thing I want to show is when you look at the bird, you'll notice how similar it is to the ducks that we have here. These are called green-winged teal, and you'll see for yourself, and I turn the mic over to Rebbe.
He's dancing for joy. He thinks they're going to let him out. Huh?
These birds do not breed together for a very basic physiological problem. When the mallard jumps on the female in the water, he drowns her.
It's on in the water. It's only in water that.
Yes, that's all I found evidence of, Rabbi. We have no indication that they're able to breed naturally. Although artificially, maybe they could get them. I haven't been.
Yeah,
able
but that's not a simon.
Did Rabbi see them?
Yeah, I see them, sure. Before we go further, I want to digress for a second. That's such a bad habit of mine. I just all these birds over here, they have a big flat beak like a duck has, okay, and webbed feet. And there are showing them Shulchan Aruch even as one day, but others are chaylik, that even if we're only going to eat an oif toher b'matzores, and we won't accept any simonim identification, afal pikein, we could rely on one simon, which shows us clearly that the bird is not doiris, and that is if it has the wide, flat beak, the duck-like beak, right, which geese have, and the teal, and similar birds, and also webbed feet, because a bird that has webbed feet is a waterfowl. It's in the, it swims. It uses its feet as paddles. I mean, anyone who really wants to get a good demonstration of this should go during the summer down to Prospect Park Lake, which is a 10-minute walk from here. And they stock it with these kind of birds. They clip their wings so they won't fly away. And it's there for everyone to see. The webbed feet and the flat beak, which are simonim mufaken, that the bird is not going to be doiris. A bird that has feet that are possible for them to use as to grab and to attack, and the same thing, they can't chip away and rip out shreds of meat from its victim because of the width of the mouth. So there's no way for it to be doiris. Still, there are 2 days whether we could be samech on it, and the reason for that is very poshut. What was the Kabbalah that the Kehillas that we're part of made not to eat birds except with the Mesorah? It's an absolute restriction that even if we have rayas, bruris, that it's not doiris, but sof kol sof, we have no Mesorah because our avos avosenu never saw these birds. They weren't around in the communities that we're part of. They weren't either eaten or not eaten because nobody had any idea that they existed. They come from faraway places. And because of that, they can't eat, or there isn't at least a Mesorah. It's that sufficient if we could bring such a raya brura. The machlokes is there in Shulchan Aruch. Look in Siman Pei Beis in your Deya, Rabbi say, and you'll find out all about it. What's the lashon you have over here? All right, whatever it is, you can't miss it. The whole Siman Pei Beis is 1 page, 2 sides of a page. So, and you'll see where this shaila is presented as 2 days, and the poskim in Shulchan Aruch end up saying not to rely on this siman that it's not doiris, and once we can't rely on the siman that it's not doiris, so then we have nothing to rely on. Maybe it is doiris, and therefore it's automatically tummy. Okay? That's the shot. Yesh oimrim, right? Shekol oif shechoit chartumoi. Chartumoi means it's beak, right? Like the wise men of Mitzrayim, they didn't have beaks, but they were called chartumim. Why were they called chartumim? Anybody knows? Come, we have to admit, I don't know and you don't know. But I once picked up a chumash which had a Yiddish translation And you know, sometimes when you make a translation in a different language, you have the freedom to write anything you want because the publishers don't understand that second language. So therefore you could go and say anything in the world and publish it that pops into your brain. So he said in the bottom in the Yiddish that in south of Egypt there's a country. You know the big country that's larger than Egypt? Who knows what country it is? Sudan, right? And what's the capital of Sudan? Huh? Yes, K-H, it's Khartoum, okay? You get the idea, right? And he says that there was a university in Khartoum in the time of Yosef Tzaddik where they taught people to be magicians and wise men. And therefore all the graduates of that university were called Khartoumim. And, you know, it's his poetic license, and that's what he said. So, but these don't refer to the city of Khartoum in Sudan. It refers to the beak of the duck. Shechartumai rochav. It has a wide beak. V'chaf ragloi rechova, and it has a foot which is wide, right? Kishal avos, like a goose. Biyadua she'enoi doiris. Umuter ba'achila. Im yesh lo shloisha simonim begufay. Well, the shloisha simonim, again, like I told you, are almost always easy to identify, right? But, right, when somebody is ready, he hears something that he doesn't like to hear, so they say he cries foul, right? The Moshe says, Yesh oimrim she'ein lismoi chafilu al zeh ve'en lechol shum oif elo b'masoyres she'kiblu boi she'u toher v'chein noegen ve'en l'shanois. So that's the end of that. Otherwise we'd have lots and lots of birds which are not that uncommon, which have this siman. And as I told you, though, the duck, the common duck, all right, the barnyard duck, has, it doesn't have a zefik, so it doesn't have all four simonim, even if we're going to be soimach on Khartoumai rochav, the ragloi rechova. Okay. Yeah. Again, they don't interbreed with the other ducks, so we can't say it's the same species. And we have no Mesorah on it.
Okay. Just let me get
That's the common teal of Australia?
No, it's the common teal of Europe.
Europe. Uh-huh. Oh.
This is called a widgeon. It actually breeds with, it can survive breeding with a mallard. It's been recorded by scientists. I haven't witnessed this firsthand. However, these ducks have a black beak. And there were certain places where they felt that a duck that had a totally black beak should not be consumed. And if you take a look at the female mallard, its beak has a few black spots, but the majority of its beak is yellow. And we have done experiments and found, depending what you feed these ducks, the color of the beak will change. But a duck such as this one, which has a completely black beak, the beaks are never going to turn to yellow. So our question is, this duck, assuming that we can verify that it does breed with the mallard, but there is scientific research that indicates that, would this duck be permitted, or does the black beak disqualify it?
I'm not 100% sure, but it's still that the commonly held Mesorah all over is that to breed and to be a simon that it's one species is if it breeds very easily.
So
Yeah.
Our last duck that we're going to ask, which is a different species. Hang on. So this is called the Philippine duck. If you take a look, it's almost identical to the mallard. These are known to breed regularly with the mallard, and they breed so often with the mallards that there's currently a discussion in the scientific literature because it's considered to be an endangered species, but others feel that it breeds so regularly with the mallard, it's not its own species, it's the same species, and it's not endangered at all, it's just as a different color than the mallard. The female mallard, which is a little bit larger, I don't want to hold, but this one I'm going to hold so Rabbi can look at it and show you whether or not we feel that this duck is just a color strain of a mallard or whether or not it's its own species.
Doesn't it have a much longer neck and thinner body compared to the mallard? Or?
Here's the mallard, Rabbi.
Yeah. Oh. The mallard has a short, thick neck, no? I mean, that's the mallard that we see in the park, we see all over.
Should I take out the mallard, Rabbi?
Maybe, yeah, sure.
You'll have the easier job, though.
Wow, can I know her? Again, here it starts broadening right after the head, and here it goes all the way down. I don't know. But if they interbreed freely, I mean, pashtus is, and everything else is the same. I don't see why we shouldn't consider it one species. But if it's endangered species, then we shouldn't be eating it.
Well, if we can eat it, then it won't be an endangered species anymore, one way or the other.
Tell Rabbi, I'll tell you a little story, but this is one of my wonderful children, Mesorah, was born in the hospital in Middletown. That was used to be the top hospital in the mountains. And one of the reasons it was a top hospital was because it had old retired doctors from New York, which were still practicing and quite capable, and it got some sort of a famous reputation. But at that time, the push by the medical associations was to work against overpopulation. And the doctors were told that they have to tell the people who became fathers and mothers that they should try to restrict the amount of children they have. So, Baruch Hashem, when my child was born, quite a few years ago already, the doctor came over to me and he wanted to discuss something he said, Rabbi, you got to give your wife a rest, a permanent rest. And he says, you know, the world is being overpopulated, and so I said, Doctor, I don't understand. I was waiting in the farthest waiting room, and there was a whole stack of National Geographic magazines. And I picked out one of them, and lo and behold, I saw how Congress appropriated millions of dollars to preserve the population of the grizzly bears. And why don't I saw it said over there, the grizzly bears eat enormous amounts of food. So if anything, they should be reduced so there shouldn't be overpopulation of grizzly bears. Same way like overpopulation of people. So he looks at me in amazement and he says, Rabbi, grizzly bears are an endangered species. So we have to make sure to preserve them. So I put my hand around the shoulder and I said, Doctor, we're also an endangered species. Tell the Goyim not to have children. Yeah.
Rabbi, over here we have a regular chicken.
Ah, I know.
And over here we have what's known as the gray jungle fowl. Now, the gray jungle fowl, it's clear that there are a lot of people who want to develop exotic breeds of species, exotic show pit chickens and stuff like that. They introduce these jungle fowl into their gene pool of their chickens to get more interesting chickens. However, Rebbe, as you could see, the jungle fowl, whether or not it really looks like a chicken and would be a chicken, and also Rabbi Mandel and I and some other people, we went upstairs, and when it's released, it flies around the room, not like a chicken would, and they make noises that chickens don't make. And we wanted to know, first of all, if we are required to let them fly around the room, Rabbi, to show the point. And the other issue is, are these considered to be chickens, or are these jungle fowl considered to be a different species altogether? And we know that they do breed. We don't know how regularly, but the breeders, the people who want exotic chicken strains and whatever, they do hybridize the roosters with their chickens to get their more exotic kinds of chickens.
I know we get once in a while a catalog that has, pictures of all kinds of chickens that you could order if you want to have pet chickens or farm with these exotic-looking chickens, strange-looking chickens. There's so many different types, it's amazing. What is called the different species of chicken? I'll tell you a little story, another one. I got an endless supply, Rabbi. When I was a Talmud in Mesorah, we shlogged kaporas, Erev Yom Kippur, in a different way than people today, in our rich society is able to do. But in those days, we had everyone in town, okay, in Monsey. Monsey wasn't like it is today. It was just a couple of blocks long and a couple of blocks wide. And everyone, which means all the ladies with all their carriages, and all the men, and whoever was there, it was Erev Yom Kippur, they didn't quite fill up the small dining room in the yeshiva. But they came, they dropped everything, and Erev Yom Kippur, they came packed into the dining room. And Rabbi Gentel, one of the most beloved members of the Kollel, got up on a table, and everybody said, B'nai Yodam, B'yoshim Choshech Tzalmoves, and he took the single chicken which they bought from a local farmer. And he got up and he said, right, said, Chalifaschem, zet muraschem, zet kapuraschem. Correct and dikduk, you have all in the schoes, and then fill up an entire page in some Siddur. And he shlot kaporas for the whole entire manzi. And then they took the chicken to be geschochten, because that's what you're supposed to do. So the boys went to a yid who was called the Klosenburger Sheichet. He took a look at the chicken. He said, it was a bantam chicken. You know the bantam chicken? The chicken that gets up, looks like a regular chicken, but it's a little skinny, and it flies all over the room. And they use it for fighting cocks and for the enjoyment that Goyim have. And the Klosenburger Sheichet said, I can't shech this chicken. It's not the same species. It's a flying chicken all over the place. It's looked pretty close to this. But, you know, it was thinner and sleeker, and it looked like what it was reputed to be able to do. They bet on these chickens, the Goyim, when they according to one pshat in Mafricha Yoinim, that's what. So, found another chicken, another sheichet, who was known as the square sheichet. Came to him, the square sheichet looked over the chicken and said, no, nothing doing. We can't shech this chicken. This is not a Mesorah. It flies all over the place, and it's this and it's that. They were getting pretty desperate, and time was moving. And they found a third sheichet. This sheichet appeared to be a little bit more liberal. They brought him the chicken, and the same thing. They finally threw in the towel, and they went to a local farmer who had regular old-fashioned chickens, the regular egg-layers, the kind that we find in every barnyard. Brought them over to the yeshiva. Got everybody in town came back with all the babies and all the carriages and the men and the women. And Rabbi Gendel, Zeichel Avrocha, got up on top of the table and said, Zeh kaparaschem, all over again. And afterwards they shechted the chicken. It was quite an ordeal. What did they do with the bantam chicken? They just let it go. And he was right behind the Beis Medrash, entertaining anybody who cared to look for the next 4 or 5 months. Maybe somebody had rachmanis and they called and shechted the chicken. But then a couple of years later, I heard the Maisa, and he took a bantam chicken over to 3 or 4 different shachtim, and they all said, "Bash, meh. Of course, it's a regular chicken like any other chicken, a little skinny or a little cockier, regular chicken, no problem. I would have shechted it right away." Now you're asking me a question after all these decades and centuries, if the wild chicken is the same as the tame chicken in the barnyard. Nope. If all those experts in Shachtim couldn't resolve that question after they, and they were both white, they both looked like this. No, you expect me to answer that now? They're enjoying themselves, these two.
They're beautiful, though, right?
Yeah. But don't forget the Tarnagolto de Agma, who was Doiris after 25 years in the Gemara and Chulin. It was also called the Tarnagol. I know her. You know, there's, I'm standing and looking, I have the Shulchan Aruch open in front of me, and brings over here what the Mechaber, it's not Pasha, the Shach says that, he's amazed because if you look at the Tur and then you look at the Rosh and the Rashba, which the Tur quotes, very, very few people would end up saying that there's a machlokes between the Rosh and the Rashba, and that's what the Shach says. He doesn't understand where the Mechaber got it from, but the Mechaber brings it, and that's the way it's ongenommen lahalocha. Now listen to this. Mishahu im shor mekaymes she'ein lehem mesoros. Okay, we have it on the page here.
You have it on the sheet that we gave out.
Yeah. Those two seifim are very important. Take a look at what's printed here, because that gives you whatever is needed and better than the Shulchan Aruch, because it's not in front of your eyes. V'yirah shem odam hoylech memedina lemedina uvemedina sheyotza misham ein mesoros. V'mokem sheholach l'sham yesh mesoros shel oif shehu toher. Could he eat it in the new Medina? So if I come to Algeria, could I eat the guinea fowl in Algeria? Okay? And a good example. Yochel hu la'ochloi v'oisa Medina, he could eat it. Afiladait allows there, even if he plans to go back home. Ein kan mishum chumrei mokem sheyotza mishum. Okay. Now, you should really look at this whole shtickle because it has a lot of what we spoke about before. Okay, about the Rabbi Tzayed, who's Baki, Bohen V'Shmoisam, and about the simonim of a bird that's not doires, you know, the webbed feet and the wide beak that a duck has. The Shach, after asking where did the Mechaber get the machlokes from, he comes down to the bottom line and he says that we have to accept a machlokes between the Rashba and the Rosh. Okay? And he's mechalik. Das HaMechaber, read on the paper the fourth line, just after the middle of the fourth line. There's a dot for the end of the sentence, and then comes V'das HaMechaber. Okay? Shehorashba choylek al horosh. L'fi ani daiti ein machlokes beinayim. But let's take a look at what it says. V'horosh ayri b'mekaymes shaloi kiblu by heter. Nobody says it's author, but it's quite possible that in the place where there was loy kiblu by heter, they never had that bird. So that's why they never said it's mutter, they never said it's author, they never said anything. And there are many reasons they might have been noyeg and iser, because it got mixed up with oifes tameim and all kinds of similar things, marshal, and so on. Now this last line is what the halacha l'maisa is today. Even if I hold that, yes, the Medina that holds its author, they were makabel that it's author, and it's possible that even if it's mutter, there's a gzeira that for migdar milsa, you know, right? To enforce an issa deraisa, they had to asa this bird. Afal pikein if I'm yoytze mimokim shenoigen heter l'mokim shenoigen iser, bevadai muter lechol afilu ein daito lachzer, I'm allowed to eat because I'm always noig heter. Okay. Now, I'm going to present to you an issue, but they have the OU, Mr. They still have it, but the last session I wasn't able to attend. I'm able now to engage in these discussions and everything. So a couple of years ago there was a big asifa, and I was scheduled to speak, and I came a little bit late, 5-10 minutes late, and I walked into a big audience. There were hundreds of people there. There were speakers and who knows what, and there was a big, tremendous, rough argument. And the place broke out into semi-pandemonium. What was it all about? Rabbi Zweigenhaft, who was a shochet in Poland, he had a very nice Talmud Chacham, and he was one of the surviving shachtim who had the Mesorah on most of the birds, and after the war, he identified which birds were geschachten by the broad community in Poland. And he said, there's a Mesorah on, there's a Mesorah on. It turned out later that there were many people to corroborate the Mesorah of Rabbi Zweigenhaft. But at that time, he seemed to be the only one who had access to all these Mesorahs. Okay. At the same time, there were two guys who were very, very upset. They were experts and learned people, and they came with pictures, videos of 3 very, very impressive-looking shachtim. Yidden, you could see the midas and the Yerushalayim and the Edelkeit all over their faces. 3 elderly shachtim from Algeria. And they were asked, what about this bird and that bird and the other bird? And little by little, they ended up with pretty much the same Mesorahs that they had in Europe and Poland, with one exception, and that was the guinea fowl. And all 3 Algerian shachtim said that the guinea fowl they shechted all the time, and it was commonly eaten in Algeria and in Morocco. And Rabbi Zweigenhaft had said that they didn't eat the guinea fowl, and this was accepted in Europe. So these 2 Yidden were like very enraged, and this is when I walked into the Asifa, and I ran over to the podium. It was my turn to speak. I should have been there 10 minutes earlier. But immediately there was a question. Somebody, one of these 2, stood up and said, is it right and is it fair, and doesn't it sound very dishonorable and very disdainful, etc., etc.? So you could hear the tone of voice and what I was up against, that we should take one shochet from Poland and we should accept everything he has to say, and 3 wonderful Elech shachtim from Algeria, we should just disregard their Mesorah. So the connotation of what he said, the questioner, was that we look down on the Sephardim, and we don't want to accept what they have to tell us, and that's because of our haughtiness and arrogance and racist attitude towards Yidden in other parts of the world. This was the way the question was asked. So I told them, Rabbi, there is really no problem here, which is the truth. The 3 shachtim from Algeria told us that the Mesorah in Algeria was the guinea fowl was eaten. And there's no question, even if one of these shachtim would have told us, it would be enough for us. We didn't have to have all 3. Shaykhit is very erlach and very impressive, and there's a question that he's giving over the truth. Kolshken, if there are 3 shachtim who tell it over. This was the Mesorah in Algeria. But we know at the same time that in Poland they didn't eat guinea fowl. So what we have a classical case of Mishanog, Lechol, a certain bird, a certain community in one country did eat it, and the community in the other country didn't eat it. Therefore, the people in Algeria should continue to eat guinea fowl, and the people who come from Poland should not eat guinea fowl. According to what it says here, the Rashba and the Rosh. Okay? What Zwigenhoff told us was something else entirely. He said that everybody ate the things that he identified, which was true. There were birds that were eaten all over the world, and there was never any question of communities. And when Mela, his Mesorah, will accept, just like will accept the Mesorah of the Algerian Shachtim. Those who have the community that eats it are allowed, and those who don't are not allowed. But when it comes to the other birds that are eaten by everyone, we'll accept the edus that they were eaten by everyone in Kachava. And everyone sat down, and I was able to get on with my Joshua without any challenges and anger. And there we are.
This quail, just parenthetically, was one of the birds that at that asifa, Rabbi Zwigenhoff, based on what Rabbi Zwigenhoff testified, we accepted as kosher.
What's the name of the quail again? Chukar. That's the regular chukar quail.
Right, the chukar's over there, and this is just a pharaoh quail or a Coturnix quail.
Coturnix is the scientific name for the whole quail family. Yeah. Gewaldig.
Since we've had a lot of time with Rabbi Belsky, before we close, some people have sent in shilas. Obviously, if you happen to have a bird in your pocket or whatever, please feel free to bring it up. I just have a bunch of birds. We're going to ask Rabbi if they're kosher, so just hang on. Purchase on the computer. So you want to check these? Are these regular kosher ducks?
A regular kosher duck, sure. For some reason, maybe you could tell me, the barnyard ducks that are sold in the live poultry stores all over are white.
Rabbi told me 2 years ago that Americans like white duck. So, Rabbi, I heard it from you, so I'm just going to say.
I know that chickens, there are a lot of white chickens for one reason, because when it comes to kaporas, so everybody's looking, it's not even clear that there's such a meaning, but there is. I mean, there's chilukei deis. Okay.
So this is a white duck like Rabbi just spoke about, but people wanted to know, sorry, Rabbi. Here's a worm. Okay. So here, this is a duck that's eating, did everyone see it? Should we give it another one?
Oh, did I know?
So clearly, Rabbi, this duck is eating live animals. So how do we know what kind of eating live animals is a doros, and what kind of eating live animals is just, you know?
Huh? Here. Right over here. Kashkele, come on. Oh, that's it. Oh, there's another one. Gewaldig. Okay. It's lucky that the duck is not mechuyev in bedikas taloyim.
I'm just going to put it in the bag.
Gewaldig.
So Rabbi, so what is the geder of it being a doros versus?
Doros is when it attacks a victim that you have to attack, overcome and grab it and rip it apart while the victim is saying vidui.
Okay. We have one more shaila.
I mean, chickens also, in regular barnyard chickens eat little worms and.
Just in case he's hungry, we have a fish for him.
Beautiful.
We have one more shaila, Rebbe. We have a goose. I just need someone to tell me get it up.
Okay, here comes the goose. La 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 la, na 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 na, na na nim. La 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 la. Ah, geweldig. Oh, wow.
First of all, so the first question is this a kosher goose? And I mean,
Pashtus, it's a regular barnyard goose.
and the second thing is its wing. Is there any shaila in terms of trephus because of the wing on over there, which is a little bit out of sync with the rest of the bird?
There's no trephus in the outer part of the bird. And then it's not one of the trephus that are the outer part of the wing. The only trephus in a wing, Rabbi say, if it's nishber hagaf, it's a suffix trephus. What nishber hagaf? If within an etzba of the body, the bone of the central bone of the wing, there are 3 evorim to the wing, right? 3 limbs. We have, to an arm, 1, 2, and the hand is the third. So the bird also has 3 parts to its wings. I mean, you see that when you get a portion of wing, and if it has the whole wing there, so you see the 3 parts. The part that's closest to the body, right, that's hooked onto the shoulder blade of the bird, if that's broken within an etzpa of coming out of the bird, so we say there's a suffix trefa. Why is there a suffix trefa? Because, can anybody guess? Because of the lung, right? Because the cracked bone might have a sharp point, and that could go right inside, exactly on the other side of the flesh of the part of the body that the wing is attached to, and right there's the lung, and it may be nikva horeya. And since we don't know, it's very hard to examine, so we treat it like a suffix trefa. And you have all these sugyas of svek and suffix trefa, they all begin with that case of nishber hakaf.
Thank you, Rabbi. Does anybody in the audience have any other birds that, okay. So Rabbi Greenberg has been gracious enough to make sure that Rebbe's schedule could accommodate. I want to obviously thank Rabbi Greenberg, and of course, on behalf of everyone here at Torah Das, thank Rabbi Belsky and Eli Margulis, who you should know spent a lot of time putting everything together. What we're going to do now is we're going to have the birds out here for a few minutes so people who want to can come up and take a look. And then there are people who signed up for specific programs. And if you know you signed up, then you signed up. And they're going to be on checking the knife, learning how to know if there's a pegima in the knife, and of course to the korban niklef biyad, which Rebbe spoke about. So that will be, after we've looked at the birds for a few minutes. Yasher koach, and thank you very much.